3, verse 16 says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life." The grass withers, and the flower thereof fadeth away, but the word of our God shall stand forever. You may be seated in the presence of the Lord. This morning I want to speak to you a word from God, and I'm titling this message, "A Startling Admission." A startling admission. And I will say this, I do have an admission that I need to make. But I need to preach this message as a preface to my confession. But I do have an admission that I need to make. Text says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but would have everlasting life." Y'all, I don't want to perish. I believe that everlasting life is a goal worth striving for. J. Paul Getty was an oil mogul. At one point in time, he was the richest man in the world. In an interview, someone asked him, "Mr. Getty, can you tell us the secret to your success?" J. Paul Getty told him that there is no secret to success. There's no secret to fame or to fortune. But there is a formula. There is a formula. He said, first, you have to decide exactly what it is that you want. And then secondly, he said, then you have to determine what the price is that you're going to have to pay. And finally, he said, then you're going to have to commit to paying the price. So, for example, my daddy decided that he wanted to be a doctor. Let me tell you what the price is for wanting to be a doctor. It means that you're going to have to, he had to study real hard in high school in order to be attractive enough to attend Ball State University for college. And then he had to study real hard at Ball State to be attractive enough to be one of the few people who are admitted to the Indiana University School of Medicine. But then, as a medical student, he had to work really hard to be one of at Indiana University allowed to graduate. The price was 4 years of working hard in high school. And then 4 more years of working really hard in college. And then 4 more years of working really, really, really hard through medical school. Y'all, that was the price. The commitment was a commitment that was at a minimum 12 years. They make it hard for you to become a doctor. And because it's so hard, most people can't do it. But they can't do it because according to J. Paul Getty's formula, they're not willing to commit to pay the price. But here's the thing. They don't want everybody to become doctors. They don't want just anybody to become a doctor. They want to weed out some folks along the way. The process is designed to eliminate some people along the way. They only want the very best of the best to be able to call themselves a medical doctor. Therefore, some people decide not to become a doctor because they believe that the price is too high. Now, having said all that, most of us here aren't trying to become doctors. We just don't want to go to hell. But J. Paul Getty's formula for success works for us too. It works for you if you don't want to perish, but if you do want to have everlasting life. Because look, first you have to decide, what is it that I want? I want to spend my eternity with God. I want to see his face. I want to walk on the streets that are made of gold. I want to find my way into the gates that are made of pearls. You got to decide, what is it that you want? Then you have to determine what the price is. How much is this going to cost? And let me explain it this way. Some colleges only accept students who graduate at the top of their high school class. And some medical schools only accept students who graduate college at the very top of their class. And even then, in medical school, 20% of the students in medical school drop out, flunk out, or get expelled because the process of becoming a doctor is so very intense. Y'all, it's hard to become a doctor. But if you want to go to heaven, and if you want to spend your eternity with God, understand this: God will not lower his standards for you. The medical schools only accept the ones that are exceptionally good. But heaven only accepts those who are perfect. I'm going to say that again. Heaven only accepts those who are perfect. Yes, perfect. You're going to have to be perfect to go up there. Let me explain. God created a man and he named him Adam. And God created Adam in his perfect image. And and after his perfect likeness. He created Adam perfect and created a perfect woman from him. And he placed the man in the Garden of Eden. Yo, the Garden of Eden is the garden of God's presence. It's where God's presence touched the earth, and God would walk in the Garden of Eden in the cool of the day. Man lived in perfect fellowship with his God and in God's perfect presence. But when man sinned, when Adam sinned, he was no longer like his perfect God anymore, and he had to leave the Garden of Eden. He couldn't live perfectly in the presence of a perfect God. And so he had to be separated from him. Why? Because God requires you to be perfect if you want to be with him. Look, many years later, a man named Moses had a conversation with God. They were in the same general area, but they were separated. There was a separation between them. Moses asked God, he said, God, I'm your friend, right? God said, yeah, you're my friend. He said, Lord, then, since I'm your friend, can you let me see your face? Yeah. God said, Moses, no man can see my face and live. Why? Why? It's because the nature of God, church, the nature of God is like fire. Your fire is hot. And fire will always be hot. Nothing, absolutely nothing will change that. There is no such thing as cold fire. But paper is always at risk when it is in the presence of fire. Fire and paper, y'all, simply cannot hang out together. They can't decide that we're going to put our differences aside for a moment and just hang out anyway. Because the problem is that whenever the fire and the paper come together, the fire will consume the paper. Why? God, by his very nature, is perfectly pure. By his very nature, he is perfectly pure or holy. And he never, ever changes. He was perfectly pure yesterday. He's perfectly pure today. And he'll be perfectly pure forever. And nothing will change that. But I say this, as pure as God is, man by his nature is impure and sinful. We are a sinful people. Sin has made us everything that God is not. So if Moses in his sinful impurity would have stepped out into the presence of God, who is and will always be perfectly pure, then Moses would have been consumed like that paper in the presence of fire. And because mankind is sinful, it's all because We're just so sinful. Y'all, we sin easily. We sin sometimes unnecessarily. We sin without thinking about it. We sin when we don't even have to sin. Yeah, look, even when we want to do good, evil is always present with us. Y'all, sin makes us dirty in the sight of our God who is so pure. You know what we're like? Y'all, I remember as a kid, I enjoyed watching the Charlie Brown specials when they came on television. I enjoyed it. Everybody knows who Charlie Brown is. Everybody knows Lucy and Snoopy. Many people know Linus. But there was another kid. There was another kid in that same cartoon. His name was Pigpen. Another kid named Pigpen. And y'all, Pigpen was dirty. Yeah. Pigpen, whenever you see Pigpen in the comic book, Pigpen's hair was dirty. Pigpen's face was dirty. Pigpen's clothes were dirty. And y'all, a cloud of dirt would circle and surround Pigpen everywhere that he went. And everywhere he went became dirty. Let me tell you something though. Pigpen was just a little boy. And in his few years, he was already walking around in a little cloud of dirt. The cartoonist decided that he would make his dirt visible for everyone to see. Some of us have been around for a long time. He was just a little boy, but some of us have been around for a long time. And we've been lying, we've been stealing, we've been gossiping, we've been cussing, we've been whoremongering, we've been the one the whoremonger was mongering. So, what if God decided to expose your dirt? If God decided to expose your dirt, what would your cloud look like? How far out would your cloud reach? How much mess would you be walking around in? Aren't you glad that God didn't expose your dirt? But even though he didn't expose your dirt, he still expects you to be perfect if you want to spend your eternity with him. And understand, when I say God expects perfection, y'all, that is exactly what I mean. And you're going to have to look at this the way that God looks at it. Look what he said in James chapter 10. He said this, "For whosoever keeps the whole law and yet stumbles on just one point is guilty of breaking all the law." If you got everything else, but you missed just one, then you might as well have missed them all. Look, that means this. That means if going to heaven was about being a good person who does the right thing, the right way, and does it all at the right time, then in order to successfully graduate from this life to eternal life, you would have to die, and then your soul would have to get up and then go stand in the line to pick up your final report card. Y'all remember the final report card? Let me say, look, back when I was in grade school, your report card was a real card. It was a real card. It wasn't something that you put on the computer and pull up. It wasn't a piece of paper. It was a real card. And I remember very clearly in 4th grade, at the end of each 6-week period, while we were in class doing our in-class assignment, Mrs. Halsey would be at her desk working in her grade book. Her grade book is where she recorded everything that every one of us in the class had done. She would record in the grade book my math grade, my English grade, my history grade, my reading grade, my science grade. Look, when the report card came out, I even had a conduct grade. And y'all, she would grade me on some other stuff too. These I would just get a plus, a check, or a minus for. Turns work in on time, plus, check, or minus. Works well with others, plus, check, or minus. Refrains from unnecessary talking, minus. And I remember that after she had worked through the grade book and she had taken and everybody's report card was done at the end of the school day, it got real quiet. Because when it was time to go, she would stand up and begin to pass out report cards in those little manila envelopes. Okay, and then when I had my report card, I didn't open it until I got on the bus and nobody else was looking. I had to take it then and take it for Mama and Daddy to see what I had done. And it was always a period of great anxiety whenever I got my report card. I prayed more before report cards than I prayed for the rest of the school year. And sometimes when I gave Mama and Daddy my report card, I would lose some of my privileges until I would bring my grades back up. And then they would have to sign it and send it back to Mrs. Halsey. But the final report card at the end of the school year, it was different. It was different in this respect. On the back cover, it had a line on it that said, promoted to the blank grade. And if you got the last one back, and it didn't say you were going to the 5th grade, you didn't pass. It was always scary to get the final report card. Church, what if when you died, you had to go get your final report card? And you had to take your final report card to God to get it signed before you get to go to heaven. And you know that He requires perfection. That would mean in order to go to heaven, every year of your life, your report card would have to show 100% on every test, 100% on every assignment, because 99.5 just won't do. You would have to be perfect on every test. Every time, you had to get a 100%. Every time somebody lied on you. You'd have to get a 100% every time somebody called you out of your name. You'd have to get a 100% cut you off in traffic. You would have to get a 100% every time you got passed over for promotion. Why? Because 99 and a half just won't do. You would have to be perfect on every assignment. You'd have to get a plus on loving all your enemies. You'd have to get a plus on blessing everyone who curses you. You'd have to get a plus on doing good to every person that hates you. You'd have to get a plus on praying for the ones who despitefully use you and persecute you. Why? Because 99 and a half simply won't do. And the point I've been trying to make here is to let you know, one, it's hard. It's hard to get yourself into a career as a doctor. It's hard to get yourself into a career as a doctor. But church, it's impossible. It's impossible to get yourself into eternal life with God because He is expecting perfection and you can't do it. My daddy tells me a story about about a fish tank that we had in our house growing up. And the fish tank was actually given to my father by a classmate in medical school who was expelled from medical school because he got caught cheating. And on his way out, he gave my daddy the fish tank. Because he was cheating, they didn't want him to be a doctor. They expelled him from the medical school. Remember, they don't want everybody to be doctors. They want to weed some people out so they can just have the best of the best. But God is not interested in weeding people out. He's all about bringing people in. In fact, He so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son to come down here and to cheat death. He brought Him down here to cheat death. Now, whosoever believeth on Him is free to cheat off Jesus. You can cheat off Jesus. Look, y'all, the smartest kid in the class sits next to you, and you can copy off his paper. Look, God sent Jesus to cheat death. And He sat Him next to me. And y'all, I can cheat off of Him. I know something for a fact. There's something I know for a fact. I know that one glad morning, when this life is over, I'm going to fly away. But church, I've got a startling admission to make. I cheated. Look. When the day comes when I'm absent from the body, but present with the Lord, you got to know that I have a startling admission to make. I cheated. When the saints go marching in, church, when the saints go marching in, I'm going to be in that number, but there's something you need to know. I cheated. Eyes have not seen, ears have not heard, neither hath it entered into the heart of man what God has prepared for them who love Him. He did it for me, and I cheated. Jesus cheated death. himself up in flesh, and so I could cheat off of him. When he was born in a lowly manger, in a little town called Bethlehem, it was so I could cheat off of him. It was because he was why he walked the face of this earth for these 33 years. That's why he made his way up on Calvary's hill, so I could cheat off of him. That's why he died on a Friday with nails in his hands, a crown of thorns on his head, with nails in his feet, with blood flowing down, so I could cheat on him. Then he died on that Friday. He was buried in a borrowed tomb. He stayed there all day Saturday. But early on Sunday morning, church, God raised him from the dead. And my Jesus got up with all of the power of heaven and earth in his hand. So I'm glad and I'm proud to say I'm a cheater. I cheated death because Jesus said you can cheat on me. I'm glad